Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Global Great Awakenings on globalfreedomtv.com. We're joined by the great Mike Harris one more time, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Mike, it's great to have you. We just did an interview with RT on the Zaluzhny sacking, on the implications of the Ukrainian implosion and what's going to be happening, and also the Tucker Carlson interview. So let me play a quick video, and it'll set the tone for what we'll talk about. Bring up.
All right. Good to see you, LT.
There we go. Yeah, this is a very interesting situation that we're about to enter into on so many different levels. There we go. All right, Zelensky shuffles. Let's see. Listen up.
And let's cross now to Scott Bennett, former U.S. Army reservist. Scott, thanks for...
Can you hear that okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sticking with us here. What do you make of the reshuffling of this key post in Kiev?
Well, I think it's either a planned operation with the Washington CIA pulling the strings, or it's a legitimate demonstration of the schizophrenia that's afflicting Zelensky that's not going to end well for him. He's become Napoleon with thousands of troops dying of frostbite in the frontier. He's become Hitler with invisible armies that are no longer there to mobilize. He's become both a laughingstock and a pariah to the community of European nations as well as Americans. So if it is legitimate, and I hope it is, it shows that Zelensky and really this war is about to come to a humbling, crumbling crash, because Zaluzhny was extraordinarily popular, and it's going to go against the grain of the people. It's going to go against the soldiers that are still occupying. So in a sense, I think Zaluzhny is being removed perhaps because of the desperation of Zelensky. The Washington Post, of course, has reported that the front line is crumbling and cracking, quote unquote. This is absolutely true. We see there's no willpower of the Ukrainians to fight. They don't know why they're there now. All of the people that enlisted are dead. The battalions and the brigades are diminished to a quarter of what they were before. And the people occupying are just completely desperate. They're cooking tea and dying of cold. So it does represent an opportunity for Russia to amplify and saturate these front lines in these areas with flyers and messages and psychological warfare techniques that say, lay down your weapons, live. Don't die like your friends before. Russia and Ukraine have a future together that's beautiful. And I think the more messages like that that are released, it will create a trickle in the dam that'll eventually just come crumbling down. So the other thing is, are the West planning to remove Zelensky and do a Ukrainian government in exile by blaming the failure on Sersky, who's taking over for Zaluzhny? That's always a possibility. Remember, the Tucker Carlson with Vladimir Putin is going to turn the world upside down and turn the West upside down, and you're going to see even less support for Ukraine than you do now after Tucker releases the common sense of the Russian people and Vladimir Putin.
Scott, as you say, Zaluzhny was a rather popular general, but he did have this public rivalry with Zelensky. Do you think this move by Zelensky is purely political? Because to replace him with Sersky, who's not exactly popular with the people, it seems like an odd decision at this time.
It does. It seems it's either the sign of a grossly incompetent schizophrenic Zelensky and equally incompetent schizophrenic Biden administration and NATO and the Western establishment that are running around like chickens with their heads cut off. That's a very real possibility, because this, to me, signifies the sign of a strategic implosion. This, to me, signifies the last desperate collapse of the Ukrainian military political establishment. This is the last action before desperate overtures for peace and 38th parallel and some sort of a stalemate are declared. They can only do that when they blame the failure and the fiasco of the military counteroffensive and all of the other failures of the Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian politics on certain people. So they're blaming Zaluzhny. If he was doing a great job, if he was succeeding, if he was victorious, he was winning the hearts and minds of the Russian people and turning them against Putin, if he was eroding the resolve of the millions of volunteers that came from all over Russia to fight on the front lines to save women and children in Soledar, Donetsk, Lugansk from being genocided and horribly mutilated. If Zaluzhny was successful in those operatives, they wouldn't have replaced him. But he's not successful. No one's successful in the Zelensky military or political ranks. They're all nothing but clowns and a clown show. And now the circus tent has been ripped from them. And what do you see underneath that tent? Human trafficking, organ harvesting, Israeli participation, all sorts of criminal activities, money laundering, bioweapon chemical laboratory sales, George Soros' son being appointed as a minister of the Zelensky government, giving away Ukrainian land, black soil. So as we see the war crimes and the crimes against humanity and the criminality of this Zelensky regime, it seems to me that they're setting up or trying to set up a smoke bomb or a flare or some distraction that's going to try and allow them to steal more money out of the country, set up mansions in Florida, Egypt, or the south of France, and allow Zelensky and others to flee what is inevitably going to be their end. This seems to be a setup for that, but it's going to work against them because the entire population of Ukraine are going to look at this as not only a betrayal of them, but it's a sign of the end of the war.
Okay. Scott Bennett, former U.S. Army reservist. Scott, thank you. American journalist Tucker Carlson.
So what we have there, Mike, I'll let you comment. Go ahead and give us your thoughts on the Zaluzhny sacking of, the Zelensky sacking of Zaluzhny and what you think that's all about.
Well, I think Zelensky is sacking Zaluzhny before Zaluzhny pulled a coup on Zelensky and threw him out. Zelensky is incompetent. He is obviously paranoid, and that's a result of his habitual cocaine use and drug habit. And I'll even go far to make a funny here that the cocaine they find in the White House, Hunter probably brought it there for Zelensky. So something they have in common. But all joking aside, the Ukraine structure is falling apart. The military is losing their affection for their leadership. That's why Zelensky fired Zaluzhny. Zaluzhny was more popular. And if the soldiers won't march to Zelensky's orders now, he only has himself to blame. So that's my take on it. Is that Zelensky feels the restive nature of the military. They're tired of watching their troops. I mean, if you're a commander and you take responsibility, I don't care if you're a second lieutenant or a bird colonel, whatever, you've got responsibility for these lives in your hands, and you have a mission to accomplish. If you go out there and accomplish the mission, you know you may lose some people. But when you lose 500,000 men under your command, that's got to be a nightmare. And it's because the expectations that are put on you as a commander are unachievable. And if your leadership does not listen to you as a commander, telling them that, look, we can't do this. We don't have the men. We don't have the resources. We're engaged in a better force. What do you want us to do? And they're not being realistic in their expectations. Zelensky is caught in a vice himself, where his U.S. sponsors from the State Department, Victoria Nuland and company, are pressuring him to get results that he can't get. And so he had to do something. And so the easiest thing to do is to fire the next guy down the ladder. So he fired Zaluzhny. And I expect that the military is going to come back with some form of coup where we're going to find Zelensky hanging by his neck from a bridge, or his head on a pike someplace, or something here pretty quick. Yeah. I would not want to be Zelensky right now. Like I said, he does have a drug habit. He is a heavy cocaine user. His paranoia is going to be driving him batshit crazy. Mm-hmm. So it's unfortunate for the people of Ukraine is who the losers are here.
Well, how do you see this ending? How do you see this Ukrainian conflict ending? There's a few different scenarios. Number one, Zelensky's killed. He's turned into a puddle of goo, and Ukraine has nothing there. Or there's a government in exile. They airdrop everyone out to Britain, and they set up Ukrainian government exile like they did in Iraq, or there is a coup d'etat against Zelensky. How do you see this Ukrainian Russian conflict, NATO conflict, European Union, American conflict? How do you see this inevitably ending?
Well, one thing I know from discussions I've had with my Russian contacts within their foreign ministry is that Putin is not going to settle for a Korea situation where you bifurcate the country and divide it in half. Putin is not going to allow that because he has sworn that he's going to eliminate the Nazi threat that is primarily now in eastern Ukraine. I'm sorry, Western Ukraine, and he's not going to allow that he's going to eradicate that from the country, period. So could they have a government in exile? They could, but it's only going to be, like I said, a puppet state. It won't have any authority or anything, no backing from it. So I look at really the only way out I see for the Ukrainian people is if they have a coup and they sue for peace with the Russians. And then Ukraine then becomes integrated into the, becomes a Russian ally, if you will, instead of being an adversary, like they're positioning themselves under the direction of the U.S. This has been an extremely costly mistake for the Ukrainian people that their leadership has made. And this is all the fault of the U.S. State Department and Victoria Nuland, who instigated the coup. You see, our government says we're defending democracy in Ukraine, and that's a lie because Victoria Nuland spent $5 billion U.S. taxpayer dollars to topple the duly elected democratic government of Viktor Yanukovych. They spent $5 billion to topple this guy, and now we say that we're going in there to defend democracy. Bullshit. It's another regime change operation by the State Department, which they're somewhat good at. But like I said, anything the U.S. touches turns to shit. It's like the fecal touch all over again. Afghanistan, Iraq, Ukraine, anything that the U.S. touches is going to shit. And so I blame the U.S. for this,
Yes.
not the Russians. U.S. are at fault. We are the culpable party. It's our government that is our Jewish occupying government, our Zionist occupied government that is responsible for this. It's not the American people. As I said, the first we heard about this, you and I, on your show, I said, we don't have a dog in this fight. We don't have a dog in this fight. We still don't. I would like to see peace brought back to Ukraine. I've been there multiple times. I like the Ukrainian people. I like the culture. I like the place. And I really hate to see it just torn up the way it has been because of our State Department and their grandiose ideas. And the problem that the U.S. has right now is that these clowns in Washington think they've got more. They think they have more juice than they've got. They can't pull nothing right. They keep making mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake, and the people in the United States, we're paying for it. 20 years in Afghanistan for what? They had nothing to do with 9/11. All those years in Iraq for what? They had nothing to do with 9/11. But that was the excuse we were given, and we're lied to constantly because of this Jewish agenda to try to dominate the world and cripple countries that are that might oppose their agenda. They wanted to take over Russia and break it up into 14 different countries and balkanize it like that. And Putin's not going to have it. And the Russian people are not going to have it. They are a unified and united people today because of what the U.S. has done. We watch what they're doing to Trump. They file these lawsuits against him. They try to take him to court. They indict him. All they've done is made him stronger.
Yes.
All we've done is all they've done is make Putin stronger. They made Russia stronger. They made Iran stronger. They have bolstered their position both domestically in their own countries and globally among other nations. You know, the BRICS now account for 47% of the global GDP and oil production. They dominate that. The U.S. is on the wrong side of all of this. These Jewish idiots think they have more capability and more foresight, that they know how to do things, and they do not. They are completely out of their league, and they're really making a mess of things. I mean, truly a mess to where it's going to affect the American people, and it's affecting us now. We're just seeing the beginning cracks of it.
Let me set up the other video here, and we'll go to it. It's Tucker Carlson, and I think this is powerful because it overthrows a lot of the narrative that's coming. And you know, I said too, this is going to overthrow all support for this Ukrainian fiasco. What you said is pretty powerful, because one thing is important to remember, and that is that no one in the United States government has clean hands in this situation. And when you just label and describe very accurately how these Jewish, Zionist, Ashkenazis, whatever you want to call them, in the United States government are so out of their league, they are incapable, and they are not, they don't have the intellectual power, they don't have the skills, they don't have the instincts, they have nothing that can propel victory out of this terrible mistake that they've made. This goes to everybody. This goes to Biden. This goes to Kirby. Admiral John Kirby is always on the State Department that we're going to hear in this video. It goes to McConnell. It goes to Schumer. It goes to every Republican and Democrat on Capitol Hill who voted for this. And it also goes to Rand Paul and the rest of these fools that never articulated or expressed any real passion about just how stupid and suicidal and destabilizing this whole Western adventurism has been since 1992. This goes back 30 plus years. They didn't just start this in 2014. They have been pursuing this cannibalistic agenda to steal Russia's, what is it, 8 trillion? Putin talks about his Russia having like 80, I think it's 80 trillion or maybe 800 trillion resources in the ground. That's oil, that's timber, that's coal, that's diamonds, that's gold, that's silver, that's everything value. And every American in the military, in the intelligence communities, in the Congress, in the State Department, in the CIA, in USAID, in MI6, CIA, all of them are guilty and have blood on their hands and have, deserve to be lobotomized and executed, because no one has stood up, not even Rand Paul or Ron Paul, that dittering, stuttering old imbecile who believes to be sitting in a rocking chair next to Joe Biden, because I'm sick and tired of hearing their blathering pontifications rather than the requisite passion and anger that the American people feel but fail to really articulate. That's the job of certain Republican conservatives and certain Republican conservative speakers. Tucker Carlson's done a little bit of it, but
let me interject one thing here, Scott.
No one has really got up and said what needs to be said. Go ahead, Mike.
Let me just interject real quickly before you play the video here. You have to look at our military in a different way now. With what we've tried to pull in Iraq, the action in Syria, Afghanistan, now Ukraine, you have to look at the U.S. military as really a bunch of armed bandits. Yes. And they're here to go and break these countries and steal the natural resources. This is a massive operation, and that's really what the U.S. military has devolved into. Instead of defending the homeland and protecting our own border, they've turned them into a bunch of bandits to go out and mug and rob people at gunpoint. And that's what we're doing to these other countries. That's what the U.S. military has become. And it is a sad day. It breaks my heart to think that our beloved military has sunk to this level under this Jewish leadership. And that's what they've become.
Yeah, they have indeed. Drag queen happy hour.
And has announced his
Spaghettosis.
highly anticipated.
This is the interview that Putin and Tucker did, and it's interesting to sense and hear and foresee the Western response. And as I've said, it's going to turn the West upside down and completely obliterate all support for Ukraine, and I think open up hopefully new attitudes towards Russia, which are more common sense based.
Interview with the Russian president will air at 11 p.m. GMT on his self-titled network. You can watch the broadcast in full on RT. The Kremlin says it will publish the interview Friday morning and hopes it will be viewed by a wide audience. Well, Mr. Carlson's teaser video for the interview has garnered over 100 million views. The backlash over his one-on-one with President Putin is spreading across Western media and among politicians. It's prompted some journalists to allege that Western governments are trying to suppress different opinions. And despite wide-scale interest, the White House claims it's not important for anyone.
I think it's pretty obvious, should be very obvious to everybody, what Mr. Putin has done in Ukraine. And the bogus, completely bogus and ridiculous reasons for which he tried to justify it. I don't think we need another interview with Vladimir Putin to understand his brutality.
I think the people who want to be in power, I believe they are the people that don't care about law and constitution. They think that they can ignore that. So they try to silence people by either ridiculing or saying you're unpatriotic or you're telling a lie.
That's what irritates them most, is the fact that he's thrived by breaking the chains of the mainstream media. He's thrived because people are starved for information. And that's exactly what the elitists don't want. Because they're authoritarian at heart. They don't want you to even hear the other side.
U.S. journalist and political analyst John Veroli told us there's no room for opinions different from the government narrative in the U.S. and Europe.
The American government has been harassing him, hounding him. You know, he's so of course they're going to call him a traitor. They're going to call him a traitor. They're going to do everything possible to harass him, to try to discredit him. There's no free press. Look what they did. They tried to destroy his career. They chased him from Fox News, and he came back only through his incredible willpower and strength and his belief in America, his belief in the American people, his belief in truth. In modern Europe and in North America, there is no room for other opinions. There's just no room for other opinions. There's one narrative. It's the government narrative. They lay down the law, and all other media companies, journalists, editors, they have to follow that narrative. There can be no deviation whatsoever. I mean, just look at this reaction, how strongly, how ferociously they're reacting towards Tucker Carlson. He's simply doing his job. He's a journalist. His job is to interview people, to gather information, and then to let the public make their own conclusions. But no, that is no longer possible in modern Europe and in the United States, where most media companies are under the control of the government, either directly or indirectly. Again, there's only one narrative, and there can be no deviation from it.
So, Mike, we have the Tucker Carlson interview and what that is going to do. I'll hand it to you to get your feedback on how you see this unfolding.
Well, I've read the transcript, at least as much of it is currently available, and Putin sounds extraordinarily rational. I mean, he's not the madman. And about Tucker Carlson, labeling him a traitor, we weren't alive yet, but back in World War II, U.S. journalists were interviewing Adolf Hitler, and you know, this is allowed. We're allowed to know. We as the Americans are not allowed. We have a right to know what the other side is doing, and are they legitimate? Are they the madmen that our government says they are? And they're not. And Putin certainly is not a madman. He's very rational. He's one of the patience he has exhibited with the U.S. is incredible. If the tables were turned and a foreign power was doing to the U.S. what we've been doing to Russia, their leadership would have, our leadership, the Biden leadership would have crushed them, would have had some over-the-top, out-of-control response to it. And this goes to Trump, too. I mean, really, we need an entirely new foreign policy. We need to dismiss the entire State Department and start over from scratch. We need a State Department that's not worried about acquiring the mineral and material wealth of the world. We need a State Department that's concerned with what's in the best interest of the American people. And we do not have that right now. We haven't had it since they murdered JFK back in 63. And we really need to change how this country is run. And the coming trouble, the turmoil that's coming in this country may give us that opportunity if we can act on it.
Well, I agree with you. We not only have a right to know what's going on, and we have not only a right to interview foreign leaders.
We have a duty.
I thank you. I was just going to say that we have a duty, because we have a duty to enforce and preserve and protect the Constitution of the United States, and that is at risk of being destroyed when you engage in a war against a country for something that never happened, doesn't exist, and was never done. That's exactly what we've done. Waged war against Russia, and Vladimir Putin made it personal for something that he never did and the Russian people never did. They never invaded Ukraine. That was a lie. They went into the Russian areas of Donbass to protect them from being genocided from Poroshenko and then later Zelensky. That is a noble, heroic act of saving women and children and old people who have been bombed.
It was a rescue mission. It's a rescue mission. That's yes. What Putin did. It was a rescue mission. He had to go in and get them away from the bad guys who were going to murder the women and children of the Donbass area.
Yes.
And Scott, you said that we accuse Russia of this invasion and doing this. The same thing we did with Afghanistan and Iraq. We accused them of 9/11. They had nothing to do with it. It was the Jews who did it. I mean, that's a pretty open secret these days that everybody knows. I mean, follow the money. Silverstein's still walking around with his $6-8 billion he made off allowing his property to be destroyed. I mean, this is what the government of the United States does. We are a criminal enterprise in this country. Yeah. Our government is a criminal government, and they're taking their criminality not only to the Russians but to the American people as well. Yeah. Anytime you have the FBI spying on Catholics in church and in PTA meetings on mothers who are concerned about what their kids are being taught, whether it's pornography in the schools, anytime you label this white Americans as terrorists, really? I mean, let me just remind you that one thing I learned from my discussions with the Taliban is that what one party calls a terrorist, the other party calls a freedom fighter.
That's right.
Well, I'm proud to say in this country, I want to be a freedom fighter. And if the Biden administration, the lefties want to label me as a terrorist, well, then fuck them. I don't care.
Amen.
Because I am a freedom fighter for my country and my people.
Amen.
And they need to understand that. Just like, I'm proud of it.
Yes.
And these people that run our country are an embarrassment.
Yes.
And they need to be dealt with like a rabid dog. You put them down.
Yep. Well, it's been the absence of freedom fighters that have destroyed this country. Abbott is 3 years too late. He's allowed the infiltration and the invasion of the United States, and only now he's calling up and saying it was an invasion. Abbott has been part of this invasion. So has many, many others. Now, are you going to try and tell me they're late to the party, that just came to them now? They're a pretty pathetic bunch of clowns who are fake governors if they don't declare immediately this is an invasion across the southern border and a violation of the Constitution. But, that's one of the things that Tucker didn't say, and Tucker should have mentioned and asked. America looks like it's about to go through its own revolution. America looks like it's about to go through 25 different governors backing Abbott in Texas, not because Abbott's anything special, but because this issue is so horrendously unconstitutional and horrendously treasonous by invading the United States with third world, savage, stupid, retard, mongoloid immigrants that can't speak English, don't have any skills, and 3/4 of whom are probably rapists, robbers, gang members, and covered in tattoos all over their faces. This is who you're allowing into the United States? No, they need to be purged from the United States. He didn't raise any of those issues with Putin, but Russia knows that. Russia knows all of this stuff. They know that there are patriots. They know from me being over there. They know from Scott Ritter, from McGregor. They know from a lot of different voices. You've been there, and I think they are realizing that the great American Civil War is about to begin. And some of the some of the things that are going to precipitate it, of course, you described too, is what's happening in Israel and the Jews there. We've just seen Iraq, of course, again, reiterate, get America out of Iraq. The Iraqi government has said this was a violation and a betrayal by launching military strikes in Iraq. The whole powder keg's about to go off. And I know you had some thoughts on Lloyd Austin and where he was and what he is and what's happening. Michael, I'll hand it to you to go ahead and pick that up. Go ahead.
Let's talk about the Middle East here, because let's talk about Syria. Let's talk about those 3 service members who were killed, who, by the way, were members of the Arizona Guard. Okay. Arizona National Guard. They're from Arizona, the 3 of them. Okay, so they say they were in Jordan. The U.S. says that, but that is untrue. They were in Syria. We do not have a base there in Jordan. We have a base in Syria. Now, first of all, they have to cover that up. They can't admit it was Syria. And here's why. Because anything that they're doing in Syria, the U.S. is doing, is illegal by our own constitution, because, number one, Syria has not invited us into their country for any help or anything. We are not invited into Syria. And number two, we do not have a declaration of war against Syria. So therefore, every person who is there illegally. Any order that's given from Lloyd Austin on down to a private, any orders are given, they're all illegal orders, all of them. And the U.S. military, in fact, you don't have to obey an illegal order. According to the UCMJ, you have a duty not to obey illegal orders. Mm-hmm. And so the U.S. government cannot admit that those 3 service members were killed in Syria, because that implicates all of them, all the way up the chain of command, all the way to Austin and probably Biden himself. Mm-hmm. So we've got a very serious legal situation that our U.S. military needs to examine. And the inspector general better get up off his dead ass and do his goddamn job, mm-hmm. because this is a serious, serious matter. That's point one. Point two, Lloyd Austin. I don't care if he had prostate surgery. I don't care what his excuse was. He needed to resign his position, at least temporarily, while he went through that surgery, if that's what happened. It's a great excuse. Every man his age can identify with prostate problems. Every man can. But he was derelict in his duty, yes, by not declaring where he was, what he was doing, and having a responsible replacement in charge. But he was afraid to do that because he's an affirmative action hire, and someone else who came in there who wasn't of the same racial persuasion that he was may have done a better job. And he was afraid to give up his position. So was it that, or was it he was hiding from his dereliction of duty by having illegally an American military presence in a country we're not at war with? So we've got a lot of problems in this Biden Department of Defense. Well, a lot of problems.
Mike, remind us what Lloyd Austin's role was during the Trump administration, because he just didn't pop up. He's been around, and I know he was in charge of briefing Congress about the dismally failed training of ISIS and all these freedom fighters and the Syrian Democrat forces, all against Assad, all in this color revolution, coup d'etat that we're trying to do. But he's been around. Remind us how he was participatory in both Obama and then the Trump administration, because Trump's got to have some payment for a lot of this failure in Syria in order to have anything that moves forward in the future in a positive level.
Well, the problems in Syria started when the Obama administration, with the help of Senator John McCain of Arizona, started seeking funding for the rebels in Syria, the new Syrian, whatever they were. But it turns out that all the weapons and all the supplies and all the money that the U.S. provided to these freedom fighters in Syria ended up in the hands of Daesh and ISIS. So that was what Lloyd Austin was in charge of, was transferring the material and the funding into Syria to fund the new Syrian army to liberate the country from the dictator Bashar al-Assad. Mm-hmm. So that's what Lloyd Austin was doing under the Obama administration. That bled over into the Trump administration. Well, that was a crock. I mean, that's a pack of lies, because Daesh only exists. ISIS only exists because the U.S. needed an enemy in Syria to topple the Bashar al-Assad regime. That's why they were there. They were not freedom fighters. They were terrorists. And so you give them. I mean, when I was in Syria, I saw a Patriot, not a Patriot, a tow missile manufactured by Raytheon Corporation in Tucson, Arizona, that the Syrian government had captured from Daesh/ISIS. It was there. I saw it, got serial numbers, passed them along to the proper authorities. Nothing, crickets. And so the money and the support that Lloyd Austin was providing to the new Syrian army was going straight into what we call the terrorists of Daesh and ISIS. So you can't have it both ways. Any of the wounded of Daesh and ISIS, the wounded were taken to Israel for medical treatment. I mean, come on, guys, let's do the math here. Again, the United States was on the wrong side of history. And again, the U.S. tried to put a surrogate in there to foment a civil war, topple a government, to go in and steal the resources. The U.S. is still stealing the resources. They still have oil fields production down there that they're pumping out of. It was the Russians who blew up a convoy going into Turkey full of those tanker trucks.
Yep.
That there were loaded, hundreds of them.
800 of them or something.
Yeah, if you
800,
go,
800.
if you go and pull the serial numbers on those tanker trucks, which certain parties that I associate with from Veterans Today, pull the serial numbers. Those serial numbers were all U.S. trucks that had been purchased in the U.S. and shipped overseas to Syria for the purpose of looting that country's oil supply. And we're sitting back and claiming that this was a terrorist operation, that the terrorists were doing this and selling the oil. It was not. They were shipped out of the port of Austin. I'm not Austin, Houston, and there you have it. You know, the U.S. is dirty on this one. The U.S. is dirty on Syria.
Well, Trump is dirty too when he says, and I mean everybody can be clean through confession and repentance. But Trump is dirty too, and he was stupid enough to wrap himself in the flag and say, "I love the oil. We got the oil." And everybody with a brain said, "Wait a minute, it's not your oil, you dumb son of a bitch. Pull your head out of your fucking ass. It is another country's. This only ends badly for the United States when you have that attitude." And Trump did. And yeah, you could say he was fooled and lied to by Pompeo and Bolton and Nikki Haley and all these clowns around him. But he was the president of the United States. He was the commander in chief of the military. Everything was done because he didn't have the balls to stand up and say, "No, you're getting out of Syria. No, we're not stealing the oil. No, we're not blowing up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline." Trump had the opportunity for all of that. And he allowed all of this to be done. What are you going to say? "Well, I told them, they just didn't do it." Well, you know, I didn't know anything about it. You're not.
Well, Scott, Trump didn't handle it well, but Trump had a mutiny on his hands.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, the Department of State is not following his wishes. The Department of Defense is not following his wishes.
True.
Many of these departments, Department of Justice, others, were not following the wishes of the chief executive of the country that's reflected the will of the people. Mm-hmm. So what you've just identified here is that Trump was powerless. Mm-hmm. They cut his balls off. Yeah. They wouldn't do what he was commanding them to do. So like if we go back in the old sailing ship days, if you're the captain of the ship, you got 50 men on board, and you say, "Hey, go float the sail up the mast," and the guy says no. They're not doing it. It's a mutiny. Trump had a mutiny on his hands. And so what Trump has to ask himself now, if he is lucky enough to survive another crooked election and get elected, how is he going to handle the mutineers? How is he going to handle this? How is he going to do any better this time than he did last time?
If he doesn't do anything better, he's a dead man. He's a dead man. Because,
but we're all going to pay the price. We as Americans are going to pay the price. I mean, back when the days when I had a radio show, my theme music, the bumper music, opened the show was Superman, the Superman theme song. And the reason I played that music is because there ain't no friggin' Superman. It's up to us. We got to get up off the sofa. We got to go do something to change the world the way we want it. And if we want Trump to be successful, we have to make sure he is successful by making sure that the mutineers within our own country listen to him. But that foreign policy establishment, that intelligent establishment, is not going to listen to him any more now than they did then.
You know,
There's been no change. There's been no turnover.
Let me ask you, what do you two questions? Number one, what do you think Donald Trump's response should be to the Tucker Carlson interview? What questions should he be asked, and what answers and responses should Trump give regarding the Putin Tucker interview? Number two, what are the American people's response going to be to the Trump Tucker interview? And lastly, I'll say I think the best hope for a political victory in the country is a Trump Tucker ticket. There's all sorts of reasons for that, but a Trump Tucker ticket would, I think, break the mold, breach and exploit the opportunity which Trump created by being an outsider. Tucker Carlson's an outsider, but I've never seen the country so desperate for a breaking of the record, a breaking of the precedent, a breaking of all of the enslavement that we've been in since after World War II with these career politicians. You could say starting in Nixon. So I do think Trump Tucker ticket would have the momentum to win the majority of the people. But it all starts with, what is your response, Mr. Trump, to the Tucker Vladimir Putin interview? Because I think it says it all. About everything, and he has to give a response to that is smart, and that may be a challenge for him. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, in my opinion, I think what Trump should do is first of all applaud Tucker's effort to reach out and get Putin's voice heard by the American people.
Amen.
And if I was Trump, the first thing I would do, I would say it before I'm even elected. I would say, well, I will promise the American people that when I am elected, I will invite Vladimir Putin here to discuss the situation in Ukraine and to begin to de-escalate it so that both parties can live peacefully together and we stop the stupid war.
Amen.
If I was Trump, that is what I would do in advance of anything. I mean, as soon as that interview is out, I would be congratulating Tucker. I would be congratulating Putin. And I would say, I know Putin, we get along, we can work together. I will invite him to the U.S. so that we can work these matters out, or I will go to Moscow so we can sit down and work these things out once I'm elected. That is what I would do if I was Trump. Mm-hmm. So that would be my move. Now, how the American people are going to take this, I think 75% of the American people are going to say, "Wow, I never knew that Putin was that kind of guy. I thought he was a monster. I thought he was worse than Hitler." And there's going to be 10% that say, yeah, go Vlad, we got your back, we're behind you. And then another 5-10% are going to say, oh, you're all crazy, he's a terrible guy, I don't care what he says, he's lying to you. So it's going to depend on the American people. But I think that 60-70% of the American people are going to be surprised at what a rational individual is, Putin is. And that if they listen to it, and if he's not colored too badly by the talking heads on the news that are going to couch his words, different ways, try to edit snippets, how you can say one thing and they make it mean another. So, but I really think that many people are going to be happily surprised that Putin is not a three-headed monster with horns and cloven hooves.
Well, the fact that Fox News has never mentioned on their radio broadcast, their Alexa broadcast, their internet, their TV, no platform of Fox News that I have seen has told the story of Tucker Carlson interviewing Vladimir Putin, and talk about the most significant, sensational interview being held in the last, I don't know, at least 20 years. is the #1 American conservative broadcaster, speaker, journalist, Tucker Carlson, who essentially speaks for 3/4 of the American conservative patriot community. I think that's how they view him. They view Tucker as the quintessential conservative. He's married to one woman. He's got 4 daughters. He's very deeply well-rooted. That is extraordinarily important. And here he is interviewing President Vladimir Putin, president of the Russian Federation, who has better missile and weapons technology than the United States, and is about to reclaim Ukraine that is just completely falling apart, and has led the BRICS nations into a renaissance of economic freedom, political freedom, the casting off of the colonial shackles and yokes. Tucker Carlson, Vladimir Putin. It's a very important critical story, and yet nothing is mentioned. And I think that's significant because it sets up again the backdrop. You said it very wisely. Trump needs to embrace this and complement it, but it also shows just how despicably corrupt and sycophantic the American media is with this narrative. There's nothing. I don't think the grass or the straw can get any drier for this powder keg of a revolution and civil war to kick off. And I think it's inevitable that it's going to, and this is going to be one of the ignition factors.
Well, you may be right, but like I said, I look forward to better days ahead. But we have problems in this country, Scott. I mean, as I said earlier, we need an entirely new foreign policy, and we're not going to get there with the State Department we have. We need an entirely new military. We're not going to get there. We need to go and rebuild the service academies, the Air Force Academy, the Annapolis, West Point. They all need to be restructured from the ground up to become warfighting institutions, and not these political correct DIE institutions that they have become. And we need to fix it. And like I say often, we have no problems we can't fix. We just have to have the political will to want to do it.
You know how to fix it? You know how to fix it?
I do.
Go ahead.
I start firing people, and I start indicting people. And
right.
On the military, on the DoD side, the UCMJ is a very useful document, and it has a lot in there that can be covered. Like going back to the Syria situation, where I made a query with you: is Lloyd Austin still subject to the UCMJ? I would reactivate him as a general so I could hang him, and try him under the UCMJ for his dereliction of duty, and these other actions of putting United States weapons in the hands of terrorists in Syria trying to topple a government. I mean, these are despicable acts. I mean, our government is filthy, and we, the American people, everything we were told about the Soviet Union, about how terrible the communists were, the Soviet people, the Russian people, were never the communists. They were the victims of the communists.
Yes.
When I went there the first time, I was stunned at how they're just like us. God, their men are young and handsome. Their women are beautiful. They go to work in the morning. They go to church. They're just regular folk.
Yeah.
And they're just like us. I know you experience the same thing.
Yep.
But it's amazing how the leadership of a country can create an image globally about that country and about its people. And so you look at the American people now are reviled globally because of our leadership, not because of who we are or how we are as individuals, but because of how our leadership has damaged our national reputation globally. And I've been trying to work with the Taliban, trying to get mining interests so that U.S. companies can go in there and mine, because if we're going to have a 21st century economy, we need to have the raw materials for it. Afghanistan's got plenty. And they're so skeptical of working with Americans on anything because of the 20 years of abuse they put up with over there. The whole world thinks of us that way. They think of us as pieces of shit because of the leadership that our government has, the face they've shown them globally in the world. And the American people are good people. They're God-fearing people. But yet we got trannies on everything. We got queers everywhere. That's not the American heart and soul. That's not how the American people are. We can't stand these people. You know what I mean? But they're forcing them on this. So where's this all coming from? And it all goes back to the same source. It all goes back to the Jewish Marxist Khazarian mafia who wants to break our country down and destroy us. And so we have very few friends left in the world.
Mhm.
And so we need to rehabilitate our reputation as a country, as a people. And we need to purge our own government of these traitors that are in our midst that have come here to undermine our country, betray us. Going back to the Frankfurt School in 1933, I mean, these are despicable people. All they care about is themselves and money, and we don't need them. We don't need anything from them. So
Well, I think
we
it's
can live without them.
well, I think it's a powerful indicator. You're right. You fire people. You begin to fire people, and there has to be a great divorce. There has to be a great divorce from Zionism, the Jewishness, their Holocaust claims, which are bogus and lies, especially in the face of their genocide of the Palestinian people. There needs to be a divorce from BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street Capital, which is as well as the Soros groups and all of this that have been using the government and the military for their criminal activities in Ukraine and beyond. There needs to be a lot of brutally arrested, incarcerated, and executed traitors and people that have been undermining the United States in these organizations.
Well,
Forcing
Scott,
into
let me
Bud
remind
Light,
you.
let me say, forcing into Bud Light and Target the homosexual transgender agenda to destroy the internal country. I mean, these people need to die. They need to be executed after due process of law, fine. But this country, America, the Republic of America, and the republics, again, I'll say it over and over again, the Constitution of the United States guarantees to every state a republican form of government. That means every state is a republic, and every republic can call in a constitutional convention, and Trump and Tucker can say this. We will have a constitutional convention in 2025 when we're elected, and we will rename the United States of America into the United Republics of America. That's the proper way to redefine us out of this confusion and this borderline Twilight Zone slave state under federalism. That's what the anti-federalists feared. What they feared has come to pass, and worse. What the anti-federalists feared has come to pass, and worse, because now you have a brutal dictatorship in Washington that forces COVID-19 vaccines into every kid, hormone puberty blockers, sexual surgery to castrate boys and girls by their schizophrenic divorced mothers or beta male fathers that do this, and governors like Gavin Newsom and state senators like Scott Wiener pushing this. All of this that's happened to the United States needs to be brutally dealt with, not politely dealt with, not a political difference of opinion, but there needs to be a brutal execution of the doctors that have been doing these surgeries, the politicians that have been pushing this, and every other player. This country needs to totally redefine itself, and the republics of America, the United Republics, I think are the way to do it. And the ones that start are all the states that have thrown their backing against Abbott. Though that's the Constitutional Convention. Those states need to call themselves Republic, Republic, Republic. And only when they do that will I have a hope that there's actually better days for this country. Until then, they are all squabbling and throwing manure at each other, debating silly things that are distractions.
Well, Scott, I agree with you on the republics, but to go back, take a step back, you were talking about the Holocaust. I want to remind people of the larger Holocaust that the Jewish Zionist Bolsheviks implemented on the Russian people, where they killed between 80 and 100 million Russian Christian men, women, and children, murdered them outright. And they've never been taken to task for that because of World War II as a masking event. It was forgotten and swept under the rug. And then they made up their whole Holocaust theme to make themselves look like the victim, whenever they were the ones who were murdering tens of millions of people, not just a mere 6.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get straight about that. Your earlier point about a Trump Tucker ticket, I'd love to see that. I also like Tulsi Gabbard. I think she might be another good choice if Tucker says no to the offer, if Trump makes it to him. But we've got a handful of good people out there that Trump could pick who would be really, really good. One thing I don't like about Tulsi Gabbard is she's a woman. I'd rather she was a man, because I'm tired of this political pandering. Oh, we've got to have a woman on the ticket. Oh, we have to have a black on the ticket. Bullshit. I'm done with the DIE agenda here. I want to see strong men running the country. I want to see strong men who know what they're doing run the country. And you know what, Scott? Trump ought to be calling guys like you and I and a handful of others and say, hey, are you willing to help me? And of course, I'd say yes. I'd help him. I'd try to keep him on the straight and narrow. I try to give him good foreign policy advice, good domestic policy advice as well. But we need a new government. We need a change of management because the management we have is broken and dysfunctional.
Mike, I think let me hand it to you to end us in your analysis of the Gaza-Israeli situation. How is that now, and what do you see happening?
Well, I have mixed thoughts about the Gaza, how it started. Okay, I don't know if we're being told the truth about how that began. The fact that there are still hostages tells me there might be a grain of truth that Hamas actually did this, that it wasn't an Israeli false flag. But I do know that it was enabled by Israel to happen so they could play a political advantage. But what's going on there now is nothing short of a genocide of the Palestinian people. They're genociding the people and they're ethnically cleansing the area of anyone who's Palestinian, because the Jews want it all. They think they're the chosen people. They think they're entitled to it. And so what's the death count up to? What, 28,000 now? Of which 12, 14,000 of them are children, little babies. I mean, how is a 3-month-old, 6-month-old child a danger to anybody? Yet the Israelis are slaughtering them with abandon. The good news about what's going on in Gaza is that the Jews have exposed themselves as the monsters they truly are. They have shown themselves, they've shown the world what their real face looks like. And so all their sympathy, all their Holocaust bullshit that they're the victims is out the window. Victims don't act like that. Those are the perpetrators. Those are the monsters. Those are the ones that need to be hunted down and killed. And so they have shown the world who they truly are. They've gone way beyond any claim of self-defense. There's not a shred of that left. Right now, they're doing genocide and ethnic cleansing. And I pray every day for the Palestinian people and that this comes to a close quickly, that somehow this can be stopped.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, and hopefully from his hand to our reality. We thank you, Michael Harris, for joining with us on Global Freedom TV, Global Great Awakenings. I will be going back to Russia to be part of the film debut that they did back in November when I was there, an American Army officer in Donbass. So they've done a documentary film on RT. They're going to be premiering it in Russia. They invited me back, so I accepted. So I'll be going back to that. We will have a report when I get back. Hopefully, God willing, keep me in your prayers. But I think this is the beginning of the thaw. And you're right, Mike. The best Americans know what Russia is, and the best Russians, which are all of the Russians essentially, know that America, the best Americans, are the patriotic, conservative, pro-Tucker, pro-Trump, conservative, Christian, family values people. And that really is the majority of the people. Go ahead.
Let me inject one thing before we go. The Russians lived 75 years under a Zionist-occupied government under communism. They understand what it's like to have bad management, like we have bad management in this country, because the people who are running our country are the grandsons and the granddaughters of the Bolsheviks who murdered 80 million of their people. They know what it's like. They've been through it. And so they understand, and hopefully they will be merciful to us whenever our Zionist occupied government falls and we expel it from this country.
Amen.
And that we can repair these relationships and move forward. The Russians should be our best friends.
Yes.
I mean, they're the most like us on the whole planet.
Amen.
We should be most closely allied with them.
I agree.
So,
Michael Harris, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time. God bless you. Thank you for joining us on globalfreedomtv.com. Remember, if you have needs for the Indian black salve, go to destroy-cancer.com. We do get your emails and messages, reply as soon as we can. But the best way to get it is just go to the website and order it from there. There's photographs and videos. It dissolves cancer when you put it directly on the skin. That's not medical advice. That's my testimony. And it can be very, very helpful to people who've got skin cancers or other melanomas, and even pets. I was sharing, some people have given it to their pets, and the cancer falls right off of the foot of the dog. So the Indian black salve is still there. We want to get it people before they try and block it and take it down, which we knew this big pharmaceutical cancer industry is desperate to do. So destroy-cancer.com, and go to our website globalfreedomtv.com, and email us if you have any questions for Mike, any suggestions, any feedback. We welcome. Thank you so much. See you next time. God bless.
thanks, LG.
All right, buddy, that sounds good.